New information is surfacing and theories are running wild with the Funimation situation regarding Ishuzoku reviewers. If you don't know what that situation is about, let me explain really quick. Ishuzoku Reviewers is basically an anime that is more than ecchi. More than ecchi. What do I mean by that? I mean, it's the kind of thing you might go look up when you're back home after a long day. You're just home alone, or maybe you're in your room alone. You get your right hand or your left hand, maybe, and you then spend your time quite wisely, being a cultured individual. That's what I'm referring to. And that's arguably what Ishuzoku Reviewers is. So you can see why Funimation might have a bit of an issue with intellectual property like that when you look at Funimation's business decisions and the kind of stuff that their VAs and their executives are into. Doesn't seem like they'd be into this. So that has some very interesting theories going about. But this situation only became really public information when this email went out. You see, it seems like Funimation was brushing this under the rug more or less. And I'll get into the new stuff here in just a moment. We are almost done with the recap. This email reads, "Hello, Funimation user. Thank you for contacting Funimation support. We appreciate your business. After careful consideration, the series was removed from the service as it falls outside of our standards. We have the utmost respect for our creators, so rather than substantially alter the content, we felt taking it down was the most respectful choice. Please let us know if you have any other questions or concerns." So, as far as I understand, Funimation never made an official statement about this. They never actually informed anyone until this email became public information. And then they're indirectly informing people because this is getting spread around. So they more or less silently pull the intellectual property, and now this is how people are finding out. Of course, the other way to find out would be you go to watch the series and it's suddenly gone. That's also one of the ways that could go down. So there's been some recent allegations against Funimation that they fired a translator for this series. Over on the Funimation forums, we have this user ShortyGal posting this. "Looks like Funny canceled Interspecies Reviewers. Say the show is outside their standards, looking more like people being called conspiracy theorists were right." And the response, so someone says, "It's ANN. They probably didn't even talk to Funimation. They probably just copied the Reddit post." Shots fired at ANN there. And in my opinion, reasonably so. I don't think they do very good work at all. They write, "Also, Funny broke their contract with the translator and fired her a couple days ago and forced her to sign an NDA so she couldn't tell anyone the show was canceled. It seems like Funny had planned to silently cancel it and say nothing." NDA, of course, a non-disclosure agreement, basically means whatever is outlined in the NDA you can't talk about. So in this case, it was probably all the behind-the-scenes information that this translator had. Now, of course, this isn't actually confirmed or not. This is just what people are posting on the Funimation forums. But there's a bit more to it. Let me show you. So then there's a response. "I'm not going to post where I got the info." Excuse me. The response was first here. Where do you proof that fired their translator?" Okay. "That mostly just gave her a new dub show to translate her on. That mostly what happened with all the voice actors who work on the dub too." So a terrible, very broken English here, but you get the idea. They're asking, what's the proof? What's the proof? You got one person claiming that Funimation fired a translator before removing the IP, and this other person's basically asking for the proof. The response to that is, "I'm not going to post where I got the info about the translator because I don't want to get anyone in trouble." And they also respond somewhere else and say, "Well, I'm not making this stuff up." Now, excuse me, as much as I'd love this situation to get more and more complicated and bad for Funimation, as interesting and fun as that would be for me, because I don't like what Funimation's been doing, and a lot of people agree with me on that one. As much as I'd love to believe the situation, at least for Funimation's sake, being not a good look for them. It wouldn't be good for the translator, though, I imagine, although that all comes down to the contract. If they had her sign an NDA, I imagine she also was able to negotiate a little bit the payment and that sort of thing. Hopefully, if this is a true story, what I'm getting at is it worked out for the translator. But all that said, excuse me for being skeptical. I personally don't know if I believe this. I just gotta go by my standard, man. My standard is if someone posts something on the internet without any proof, I can't in good faith believe it. So personally, this translator thing, I don't know. I'm leaning more towards not believing it than believing it. And if this person by any chance watches my content, I'm sorry. It's nothing personal at all. And if you really are in contact with a translator and stuff, I'm glad that you're there for them. But when it's just text on the internet and nothing backing it up, I have to be more inclined not to believe it than to believe it. That's just the way the internet is. Now, I will admit this user did post something quite interesting here, though. Apparently from Brittany Londa's AMA, a voice actress. She says, Hey guys, apparently in my absence, there's been a huge influx of questions regarding interspecies reviewers. Instead of flooding the thread with them, I'll answer once here. I'm not a representative of Funimation. My words are not their words. I just show up and act in the shows when they hire me. I'm not a part of these decisions. I and anyone else acting on the show have no more information than all of you do. The post going around saying it has been dropped was my first time hearing about it myself. I don't know what happens next, what will happen with the sub/dub, etc. I enjoy working on the show, and I'm sad to hear this news too. So I guess they worked on it. So there you go. Apparently they don't know anything, or at least that's all they're saying. Interesting that they brought it up in an AMA, and I assume maybe it was asked, maybe someone asked a question there about it. So some of the theories, what are some of the theories going on right now about why this series got dropped by Funimation? Well, some theories that are out in the community and some that I came up with are right here. We got 4 to go through. Number 1, Funimation licensed the intellectual property to stop other companies from getting it. That doesn't seem very likely. I mean, Funimation isn't the smartest company around, but that just seems very, very stupid. Number 2, Funimation licensed the intellectual property, not realizing what they had gotten into. They thought the material would be more ecchi than it was. That seems a bit more likely, but still not that likely. As dumb as I think Funimation is with their business decisions and the way they run their company, I don't think they're that dumb. You don't have to look very far at this series to see what it's all about. I watched part of the first episode. I didn't watch the whole thing, just kind of skipped through it a bit. The series is blatantly clear what it's all about. Literally from the title of the series, too. I mean, it's in the title, let alone the material. When you're going to be spending a bunch of money licensing intellectual property, I'm sure you look into it at least a little bit. And I phrase it like that because you barely have to look into Ishuzoku reviewers to understand what you're getting into when you license it. So I don't know if I believe that. Now, this is the theory that I'm kind of leaning towards. This is my theory here, and I think this is the most interesting one in my opinion. Part of Funimation didn't have an issue with the intellectual property, but another part did, and internal conflict ensued. I find this the most interesting because it would show us that there is internal conflict at Funimation. And let's talk about Rooster Teeth really quickly here. I have some connections at Rooster Teeth. I know some people that work there, and that's part of why I criticize RT as much as I do when they make a bad choice. Because I know there are good people working there, and they have told me straight up that they're not happy with what's going on at Rooster Teeth. So there is some internal conflict over at RT. Maybe there's some going on at Funimation as well. And the big difference here is the potential internal conflict we would have with Funimation in this situation is more at the executive level. It would, have some executives, management, that sort of thing, being fine licensing this IP. And then as the production is being worked on, you have other parts of Funimation, other execs, maybe other department, other managerial positions, sort of thing. You get the idea. Suddenly being like, wait a second, no, we can't do this. This falls outside of our standards. We can't be doing this sort of thing. So that's actually really interesting to me, because maybe maybe the side that would want this thing to get dubbed, maybe they would end up having more power than the more radical part of Funimation. The radical part that people have been despising, rightfully so, especially over the last few years. Funimation didn't have this problem before. Like, no one would go after them for their choices. They would just be in the business of licensing and dubbing and distributing anime. And it was great. But the last few years, they've been getting more and more into forcing their politics and having some of their scriptwriters changing the material and their VAs in controversial situations. Some of the VAs saying terrible things to the fans. Bad decisions by Funimation. So if there's a part of Funimation that is not happy with all of this and they have power, they are some of the executives, maybe we'll see some good changes at Funimation. It's possible. Another theory I actually forgot to list here, I'll have to go and edit the article, is that some of the VAs, maybe once they started, it doesn't have to be VAs, it could be anyone behind the scenes, but VAs is the most likely here. As they're working on the show, they're after they're done in their recording booth or whatever, they start saying, we don't feel comfortable doing this. We don't feel comfortable working on this show. Maybe that's a possibility as well. And then finally, this was one that I believe Rakeda mentioned, said something along the lines of Funimation was protecting themselves and the VAs involved with the Vic Mignogna litigation, given the material of the IP, it could have negatively affected the lawsuit for them. And that's an interesting one as well. Is that likely, though? I don't know. I mean, that argument could be used in a lot of places with Funimation. This is not the first series that they've done that was a bit more than ecchi, although probably it was the most extreme. So there's definitely merit to that. There certainly is. It's a good theory. I just still stick by number 3 being the most interesting and likely to me. Internal conflict with the company. I think that would also, I try to be optimistic as well. And that theory is more optimistic to me because, again, it shows that there are some parts of Funimation, some divisions, some execs, whatever it is. I don't have the specifics because it's a theory. Some parts of Funimation, some people with power aren't happy with the company's more radical approach over the last few years. And that's my optimism kind of shining through a little bit. But that's where we're at now. The article does cover some of the additional backlash that Funimation has been getting. Some of it has a bit extreme language, though. There's some memes, talking about adult-themed content, that sort of thing. But I think I can read this post. And this one's just weird. This guy throws some shade at Vic. He sounds like a major hypocrite. Take a look at this. This one's weird. Funimation really should have handled Interspecies Reviewers better. This is coming from someone that usually gives Funny the benefit of the doubt and rolls my eyes at people brigading against them, since I've just gotten used to the weebs ready to tear Funny's throat out for every little thing, especially those dipshits in Vic Mignogna's toxic bro cult. Yes, the people in Vic Mignogna's toxic bro cult, if you're using that kind of language, you're the toxic one, just straight up. The people I've met, and I stand with Vic, are some of the most positive people. They actually go out and spend money on the anime industry. They actually, do what they can to support the industry and support the VAs that they like. What are you doing except complaining on Reddit, labeling people stuff like toxic bro cult? You just sound like a Tumblr user. But sure. Well, let's continue on for now. I'll have more criticism of this post in a moment. But yeah, I see why people are pissed ever since the new boom of anime becoming more legally accessible. New anime fans have been folks not too keen on fan service and lewd content that most of us either welcome or have become numb to. So if you don't agree with a lot of the people that I Stand With Vic doesn't agree with, why do you hate I Stand With Vic so much to call them, toxic bro cult, something so childish and silly? At that point, you're basically saying that you have a problem with Funimation and you're not doing anything about it. And the people that are actually doing something about it, you don't like them either. I think this is more just some kind of self-projection. This person's probably unhappy that they aren't doing anything to make a change. Like you're doing, you watching this video, and me sitting here, we're actually doing something to make a change in the industry. We see the industry becoming something that we don't like, and we're taking positive approaches, positive steps forward to stop that while we still can, and to support the companies that we do think deserve our money and our time. But we're the toxic ones. No, I don't think so. Continuing. Frankly, Interspecies Romance is a full-on censored, adult-themed anime over an ecchi IMO. Frankly, I'm surprised Funimation even touched it, but they did. And people who reasonably thought that they added an adult-themed series to their lineup got pissed. Besides the fact that this fiasco has really shown that we need some kind of mature audience section for the I can't believe it's not an adult-themed anime shows to make everyone happy. Funny really should have just slapped more censors on it and ran the show. I don't know if I agree with that. Funimation really should have just slapped more censors on it. No, censorship is always bad. So that's just also ridiculous. Like a show like this, they would have to censor so much content. They would be spending a lot of money on that. Easier said than done there. Not that I mind Funimation throwing their money away. Just saying. They ended with this. Better or worse, you guys licensed it. Should at least see it through. For the people who are watching and for the actors already signed on, I'm assuming they aren't getting paid for the rest of it. Who knows? Who knows? You're making an assumption. And the one VA that we, had seen the AMA from, she didn't seem that upset with this whole thing. So, I don't know. Maybe it worked out fine. Anyway, so I wanted to read that post because it was criticizing Funimation, but I also thought it was just weird. Like, it's just a weird point. Like I said, it comes off very hypocritical. Like, you're upset about the people that are actually making positive changes in the industry. Throw shade at them as you sit there complaining about Funimation. Ridiculous. Anyways, guys, that's all I got in this video. Hopefully this was informative. I'm sorry I haven't hit this topic sooner. It's been an interesting one for sure. When this news more or less broke, that was the day the Ruby finale occurred, and I was spending like hours working on that 42-minute video, processing and all that. That took a long time. So I was behind on the news. This should hopefully get you up to speed on the news if you didn't know about it already. And this is the latest information. You can read more about the situation and more of what I compiled over on nyannet.com. I will leave a link to this article in the description. For the kind people who promoted my last video on Twitter, many thanks to you. I've got some shout outs here. If I miss you, I do apologize. And if you posted it elsewhere, I do apologize that I don't know about that either. But thank you very much. It truly does help. Shout out to Kars D. Aragon, Ollie Wooly Gaming. I don't need your approval. Phantom Raven Woo, The Dinosaur King, 27 Zippos, Matt Arzenik, and Deshaun Miller. Thank you all very much for your support on that My Hero Academia video. Hope you enjoyed this one as well. And if you'd like to do more to support this channel and the work that we're doing here, consider becoming a patron on Patreon, link below, or a channel member via the join button next to the subscribe button. You got some options there, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Take a look if you're so inclined. And thank you for tuning in once more. I'll see you next time.